Well, thank you everybody for showing in today. Here, this is the Science Fiction and Fantasy Poetry Association Town Hall meeting. In case some of you did not actually know what you were getting yourselves into, then, but it seems like you all followed the link correctly here, which is better than I managed for the first couple of minutes. So I do apologize for that. I'm Brian Talwar, president of the Science Fiction and Fantasy Poetry Association. And I'm going to just go ahead and let our executive committee go and introduce themselves around the table here, so that some of you know who our usual suspects are, to go chase after with pitchforks fair after. So why don't we start first with Colleen, and she can lead on from there.
Thanks, Brian. Well, obviously I'm Colleen, and that's what it says. Vice President, I don't know, what else should I say? I'm on the board. We discuss things. We don't always agree.
Really?
Love your hair, Colleen.
Thanks, Vince. Nice to see some faces there to some of the names. Some of you guys I haven't ever seen as close to in person before as this is.
Oh. Hi, guys.
I think the pecking order is
Having
officially
morning coffee.
treasurer next.
Oh, am I next? My name is Richard Magahis, and I've been writing spec po for a few decades now, but I've just been treasurer for 3 years now. So keeping the books, I'm the one who receives your payments, despite what PayPal says. I don't know how to change that name. And it's great to see you all, and welcome to everyone. That's it.
And I am Brian Garrison, and I've been secretary since COVID, I guess, and been kind of kicking around. I had done some of the mailings before, and even edited the robot's eye to the telescope. So doing the odds and ends here and there, and just generally helping to keep poetry alive. And one of the other things that I do a lot is wrangle all the votes. So that's always a fun task and an important task. So vote. We'll talk more about that. All right, should Diane maybe go next? Sorry,
I would think so.
There.
Okay. I kind of think that Jean-Paul is a bit more important than me, but I am Diane Severson-Maury. I'm the membership chair. I've been membership chair since 2015, I think, and a member of the SFP since 2011. But I am not a poet, or rather, I just pretend. I've written like 2 poems in my entire life. So
The Odyssey.
No. Right, yeah. No, I just love poetry, and I love to help out the association as much as I can, which in the past has been quite a lot. And now that we are getting bigger and people are giving of their time a little bit more, I am able to relinquish some of my control. It's coming really hard because I had so much control.
Oh, yes.
True.
Jean-Paul?
Hello, everybody. I'm Jean-Paul Garnier. I'm the current editor of Starline, and just released a 4th issue with me as editor. So since mid last year, I'm the one that gets to read all your poetry, that sends the nasty rejections and the welcome acceptances. It breaks my heart every time I send a rejection, but I love you all, and it's great to read your poetry.
Wendy, why don't you introduce yourself?
There we go. Hi, I'm Wendy Van Kemp. I'm your friendly neighborhood con coordinator. I basically spend my time finding places for our poets to read, and a few other little odds and ends, but you guys kind of know what I do, so it's all right. Hi.
Wendy's also the new poet laureate of Anaheim, California.
Oh, yeah, that's
Yeah,
true.
so modest, Wendy.
Oh, well, thank you, guys. It's been working with the city is on a whole new level of but I'm managing. I had my debut public event last night. It went, I'm sorry, 2 nights ago on Thursday night. It went pretty well. I mean, we had a good audience. I did not sell any books. People, I think, are so used to seeing me there because I've been a regular at the open mic since 2018. They didn't even realize, my name is on the screen, says Poet Laureate. Nobody even knew what I was. And when I was finally introduced verbally, they all turned around and stared in shock. It didn't even occur to them because I'm just a regular there. But I'm looking forward to it. I'm doing some teaching. I think I'm going to be organizing a book festival for the city. And somewhere in the year, I'm going to be doing a poetry anthology featuring poets from the residents of Anaheim. So should be a fun year. Lots to do, and I'm up to it. It should be fine. But yeah, and I'm still here though. I'm not leaving. I've been a member of SFPA for many, many years. I don't intend to leave. I enjoy what I do. I enjoy doing conventions. And but I'll talk more about that when my turn comes up. Oh, and also I'm also the editor of Eccentric Orbits. I totally forgot my annual anthology. Yeah, you'll have to forgive me, guys. I didn't sleep well last night. I guess Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness was just so cool. It blew my brain and I couldn't sleep. So
don't say any more.
I will not, but I gotta say, especially for those of us who love sci-fi, you must go, but I won't say any more than that. But yeah, so forgive me, I'm a little sluggish here. I'm probably gonna slip out and get another cup of coffee, and hopefully by the time I have to speak, I'll make a little more sense.
I think that's probably going to be the hazard for all of us, stepping in out for your coffee, as it is here. This current round of COVID that I'm currently, recovering from here. It's like I may not be as vibrant and bubbly as usual then, much too many people's delight, I'm sure, but we will just see how that goes. It's like I'm happy to see so many of us here. Oh, I think I see Brittany in the house here. It's like Brittany, we're doing our round of introductions here and discussing all of our roles and duties here in the SFPA. Do you want to say a quick hello to us all?
Sure, I can. I mean, I'm not a regular member of the board or anything, but I'm chairing the speculative poetry contest this June. It's going to open up. So yeah, I'm going to be wrangling everybody's poem entries as they come in. I hope a lot of you are planning to submit, and I'm just going to get them ready to be blind read by the judge, who this year is David Kirby, who's a poet and a biographer and professor at Florida State University, and I think he's going to do a great job, but I have to get all your entries together first. So please do send me things as soon as it opens up in June. I'm looking forward to it.
All right. I am not seeing Jordan, our current chair of the Elgin Awards, in at the moment. I think she did mention that she was going to have a little bit of a hard time making it into the meeting today. Ben, is that correct? But let's see. Brian, help me out.
FJ.
Oh, yes, FJ. It's like FJ. Tell us about what you're doing here with the SFPA these days.
Well,
why do we send the pitchforks after you?
Well, I'm still doing the layout for all the publications and still doing most of the webmaster stuff. Brian G has been able to step in and help me occasionally with problems, which is great. By
helping, not for making the problems.
Yes, helping.
I make the best problems.
Helping, and I am so grateful when we had to take over the Riesling that he was and the mailing that he was kind enough to do this last mailing, which I can tell you from experience is a booger, especially now that the organization has become so delightfully large. We are almost at 450 members. Which is
wow.
immense. We were around 300 for at least a decade. So this is just huge, how much larger the organization is becoming.
And as a result.
And that means that even more of you should vote in the Rising Awards and or other awards. It's really important to be, this is one of the most functional things you can do for the organization, is to recommend good poems and books, and to do your best to see that they win.
Well, I think one of the next things that we'll be looking to talk about is everybody taking a moment of sadness to watch Brian Tawara take his final steps. And at the end of this year, we'll be having someone fill those shoes. Hopefully, maybe put them through the wash a little bit, clean them out a bit. But other than that, should be having some exciting things down the road, but someone's going to be our wonderful leader. So we'll be needing some people to be candidates for that, certainly.
I'd like to jump in there and say that everyone always says they don't have enough time. We're all writers or readers or appreciators in some way of poetry, but organizations don't run without our volunteers. And it's really important. And I always have believed in giving back to my writing community where I can. It's not horribly onerous. Sometimes there's a lot of emails, but we meet once a month. Yeah, we meet once a month in the mornings because everybody's in different time zones. If we end up with an Australian president, it's going to get interesting. But I encourage people to nominate, to volunteer, because we are mostly in democratic countries. And, part of a good democracy is that you can have good debate, you have good competition. And I'd be happy if I was running for a position, if there are more people running against me than if no one was, because then you have a choice. So please encourage yourselves to run, encourage your friends to run, and let's try and see if we get a robust election to replace Brian, who is irreplaceable.
Okay. Again, let me just say as a quick remark here to encourage a great many of you, because I have received a few inquiries from some of our members across the board, both many of our elder poets and even some of our younger poets. And this is the point where I want to say that over the last half decade and some change that I've been a member of the SFPA Officer Board, that it's been a singular honor and it's a joy to have had a chance to connect and meet with so many of you. Some it's like I think about that old Bilbo Baggins one. I don't know half as well as I wanted to, and some of you I don't know half as much as you deserve. But the end point being that what I want to stress is that the SFPA has the opportunity, I feel, as we approach very rapidly the 50th anniversary of the organization in no time. It's like that. You will be very close to setting up where we go as that organization, that you will help guide it in, usher us, and help us understand what it means to transform. And I would like to think that in my time here, we've started making that journey, that we are an international organization, that it began in the United States, but our intention is not to remain a US-centric organization, but one that helps to, at the risk of sounding very Star Trekky here, to explore new places, seek out new cultures. That for many of them, speculative poetry is a new genre. It is a new field that they hadn't considered that they could be a part of. Then both as a community, as individual writers, and even as often stressed to our membership, possibly writing against tremendous resistance, both within academia and within the traditional culture bearers, and even within certain authoritarian systems out there, who shall remain nameless, but you know who you are, and we will find a space for speculative poetry to fit within all. But anyway, lofty, it's like, with lofty elements aside, what I wanted to also say is that, if you step forward towards the presidency, then it is not like you are going to be doing everything. It's like no organization functions off of that. It functions off of working with your fellow officers. Right now, our officers are some of the most amazing and talented people I've ever had the privilege of working with in over 30 years in the nonprofit sector and in academia. And to that end, it's like, I myself will not be disappearing completely. I will be there as part of your historical organizational knowledge that you can tap into, or blame me or use me as a scapegoat, as the case may well be. But what it is sort of a question of, I do believe that, Brian, can I be president? Why, absolutely. The question is that you have to have a commitment for, I think, to really succeed in this. It's not about, it won't be about you. It will be about our community. It will be about how do we keep all of our voices included, and if you can see your fellow poets on a continuum, that some of us will be, poetry 24/7. Others of us can only be poets once or twice a year. That you can see the joy and the beauty of all of us trying to find ways to bring speculative poetry into our lives as best we can, and to share it with others, and to grow that field. And I think you have a very strong chance. These are some wonderful people, and sometimes some very, some very opinionated people as well. And that's what makes it, that's what makes it function. You can keep a level head about all of that and try to find the best way forward. So I absolutely encourage you to run for that. And it's like you've got Colleen, you've got the whole officer board to tap in and just say, hey, I need a hand on this. That'll probably be my other big point of recommendation for all of you, is that you won't do well if you try to shoulder it all. You have to be able to ask for help, and you have to be able to let others also build up their skills. Borrowing the old video game metaphor here, that's like, that's like, that's the whole point. It's like, you put your points on some skills, and you help, but the others help build their own skills as they're doing. And pretty soon we all level up, and then we can go take on the big bad of the day. But anyway, so that's my take here. That's like, so it's like, consider it, and as you're preparing for your nominations, go ahead and let's see, and at least put your nomination in. We'll just let the members do it. They're not monsters, or at least most of them aren't monsters. And even if they are monsters, most of them are very nice monsters. So Brian, it's like, what else should we say on that, or shall we move on to the next topic?
I guess that leads in good to the like you were saying, this isn't something, if leaping into the presidency isn't necessarily for you, there are lots of other ways that you can kind of start to get involved, get your foot in the door, different ways to kind of help the organization to continue doing the many things that it does. So the president doesn't do all of them, as he said, on his own. We got lots of other folks to kind of help out and keep things running. I don't know if any of the other executives here had a specific thing to say on volunteerism and kind of stepping forward there. Wendy, I think, what do you want to add here to that?
I think Diane had something to say too about volunteering.
Sorry about that. My mic was still. Yeah, I'm actually looking for some volunteers. As con coordinator, I'm trying to spread the word about SFPA, to find new members, to tap into new places around the planet. But I can't be everywhere at once, as much as I try. I do have a new point person in Europe. Let's see, his name is, and let me look this up for you guys just so you know. His name is Goran Lowry. And he, good, you guys know who he is. He is starting to do kind of what I do here in the USA. He's approaching European sci-fi cons and setting up SFPA readings, discussion panels, and he is dropping off flyers on freebie tables for me. He kind of reports back to me every now and then whenever he feels like it. it's very casual. I mean, I'm not here cracking a whip or anything. But my point is, I would love to find people in other parts of the world to do what he's doing for us. I'd love to find someone who feels they could maybe take on Australia, maybe somebody in parts of Asia. I'd love to bring in poets from Africa. I mean, everywhere where there is poetry, we should be making an effort to reach out there. But if we have various people who are willing to just go up and talk to the cons, act as a spear point to get us in there, that would be a wonderful thing. And just let me know if you guys are interested in that. I have flyers I can give you. I don't have a budget, I'm afraid. It's kind of on your own. But I feel most of us can afford to print out maybe 10, 20 flyers, especially if you do a quarter flyer system, which is what I recommend. And my flyers are simple black and white images that could go on any color of paper, even white paper, if that's all you can afford. But yeah, I'm hoping to find a few more people to do what Goran has offered to do. And together, I think we can make our organization even larger. And I know, guys, don't freak out with more members. I know I've brought in a few people in the past year, but I think we can be a bigger, more vibrant, more diverse group. And but I can't do it alone. I need people out there to do that. So anyone who is interested in just stepping up and maybe talking to local poetry groups in your area, whatever you feel you can contribute, just give me an email at SFPA-cons, I believe I am. But I'll post it in the chat so you guys can go ahead and send it to my official SFPA email. And I'd love to talk to you. And I'll leave it at that because we do have a lot to talk about today.
Hey, Anne, did you want to add more about volunteerism? If not, that's fine.
No, it's fine. I can. Well, thanks. First, I just wanted to say thanks to Wendy for your outreach. And I think that's a wonderful way for our members to get involved and to, just help increase the reach of the association, because poets are everywhere. And a lot of people, it's unbelievable to me, but people still come, when they join, they're like, I had no idea that speculative poetry or science fiction poetry was even a thing. And I thought, but sure. So people don't realize that we exist, yeah? And the more we can get people aware of the association, the more things that we can do as a group. We already do an awful lot with the contest, the Riesling Dwarf Stars, the Elgin Award, the Halloween page. We need volunteers for those every year. And some people, David Kapaska-Merkel, for example, is one who is always there in a pinch, has helped us so much in the last few years, being Riesling chair, etc. And just, we have a very small core group of people who have been helping, and it's really nice to see more people come in to help. I was able to hand off doing the MailChimp missives to Jordan Hirsch, who is taking care of that now, which is a huge relief. And Brittany is doing the Twitter, keeping an eye on Twitter and sending out tweets about what we're doing. I'm still doing Instagram, so if anybody wants to take over Instagram, feel free. If anybody wants to be an admin for Facebook, for instance, just to keep an eye on people who join the group, that they answer the questions. If they don't, get in touch. If they say they're not a member, then you can pass them off to me or whatnot. There are tons of little tiny jobs that anybody can do, and it really doesn't have to take 40 hours a week to do. Although there was a time, it must have been like 2000, what was it, 2017? I swear, it was like a full-time job. Because when I started in 2015, it was FJ, Brian Talwara, and me doing everything. And so this is a huge improvement, really. Unbelievable how much we've grown from about 250 members when I took over as the so-called membership chair. We've now come up to 450 and growing. I keep getting notifications of new members from Rich almost every day, which is just spectacular. Makes me really happy. But that said, there's still little things that anybody can do. So I understand there are not a ton of people here and everybody has busy lives, but if you feel moved to take on a little something, even tangentially, it doesn't necessarily have to be directly, SFPA little jobs or something. For instance, Akua, it has started a podcast or a video what do we call that? A vodcast that she does almost every Sunday without fail. It's really wonderful, where anybody can attend and read, and she's really taken that on all by herself, and of her own volition. So there's lots of stuff that anybody could do. The more people we have to help, the smaller the jobs. So that's all I wanted to say about volunteerism. So tell all your friends, if they're members, that they could help us too.
Right. I mean, I think as we're going on with that, one thing that I do want to also stress, particularly as we start making our headway towards becoming a nonprofit organization, then we're still waiting for an update on the formal ratification thereof. It's like, it seems we may be snagged in kind of like this quantum zone of being reviewed here. So we're hoping for that. But one thing that I think I do want to also stress that is that the SFPA is not, I feel like as our membership, we shouldn't strictly be thinking of it as how do we become like other literary associations. That in fact, what I have always been stressing to many of our other members in private one-on-one conversations, and I think pretty publicly as well, is that we have a chance to be a new model for what it means to be a community. That there will be this continuum, then where our mission, as we go out into the cosmos, then is to challenge and explore the many different possible ways of being a poet and being a network of fellow poets, readers, audiences, publishers, and so on, who bring poetry into our lives. So that's the one thing that I am hoping that our organization keeps continuing then. And to that end, to Diane's point then, is that this means that sometimes we take on standing roles, or something such as volunteering for mailing. Sometimes it means that you might want to take on a one-shot only idea like Eye to the Telescope editing. Maybe other times you might just say, hey, I've got an idea for a great special project here. Let's see, we want to do a benefit for this group, that group, or this particular cause or issue. And by all means, with enough notice to the officer corps, we can certainly figure out how we could fit that into our operations and opportunities. All right.
Yeah, and one thing to add related to that is, we ran kind of the first town hall last year. And as part of the overall discussion, what came out of that was, Wendy Van Kemp being the con coordinator, because there was a lot of interest in kind of getting more attention to cons, kind of encouraging people to meet up at cons. There had been, motion years ago to kind of work toward getting more kind of local connections built up. So, being able to have things like this and to hear input from members, even if your involvement doesn't mean that you're able to kind of commit a regular time to kind of helping things along, giving ideas is always a good thing too. So the more that we can hear from members, the more that we can kind of work toward, well, do we have the capacity? Do we have someone who has, that experience or knowledge that could be used that way? So being able to see some of that kind of come out of the woodwork is also always good. So, if you've got thoughts, feel free to email the exec team. That's the SFPA-exec at Google Groups. I'll put that into the link as well.
Right, even things like, having a presence at AWP, I know, has been one where I thank Lawrence and so many of the others over the years who've been able to attend. And let's see, even if we don't have a formal presence out there, making sure that SFPA poets can connect with one another, even if it's just stop by my table and say hi for a couple of seconds. I believe it or not, it does make a difference. It gets it into people's ideas there that that wow, it's like I don't have to shoehorn myself into whatever hot trendy poetry press is doing out there. It's like I can actually write what I like to imagine about what I always hoped poetry would be. And your presence makes such a difference.
And we did kind of start to mention that we do need chairs for each of the different the contest and the Elgins and the Riesling and Dwarf Stars, but we are in the thick of all that voting and nominating, and some things are coming to a close, some things are coming up to open here soon. So we are currently accepting Elgin nominations through June 15th. The contest will open on June 1st. Then we'll have that Riesling short voting closing along with the Elgin nominations. So I kind of put a list there in the chat. So as those are kind of coming up to a close, be sure that you're reading through the Riesling and making your selections and savoring the good ones and seeing which floats to the top, which one is the richest.
Actually, that sounds like a good jump off point there, because it's like, since we've got enough of our members here. All right, should we talk a little bit about why we suddenly decided that this is going to have to be the year that we split up the Riesling review nominations there, so that you're not all sandbag trying to read through over 300 poems, within a 6 to 8 week window?
We already had a problem with people, far fewer members voting for the long poems because they said they did not have time to read them. And now with so many more members and happily more nominations, we just can't reasonably expect people to be able to read all those poems and vote on them in time, especially since the long poems take up the bulk of the anthology. So I think that voting on the long poems much later in the fall is a great solution. If SFPA continues to grow, we will eventually, and there's no telling how soon, have to develop another system because people won't have time to read the short poems in the time allowed. And we either will need to postpone the short poem voting as well, or rearrange the schedule somehow, or we'll have to institute a further method of limiting nominations so that we have an anthology that can be that is an appropriate size for printing and readable within a reasonable voting period.
Right,
I'm thinking that for the time being, and if the organization grows large enough, someday this won't work either, but we'll deal with that then, that the most expedient thing coming up once it gets unwieldy is to limit people to one nomination rather than two.
Right. I mean, I think the challenge is one where I don't quite think it's an existential crisis, but it is one where the request has often been a division that I don't think I was able to support very often. Was the idea of, do we get a slate of a select core committee of people, then trying to arbitrate what qualifies, then expecting that committee, for example, to suddenly have these eyes across over 60 or 70 SFF journals alone, let alone for publications, for books, the non-speculative literary venues, then, and to just be these watchguard sentinels, but then that didn't seem like it was ever going to be satisfying either. It's like there would be accusations of bias, there would be things of, how dare you miss my indie publication out there, this is totally quality, and it's so I think it still remains a wonderful idea for the whole membership to be chipping in and to be finding the poems first to consider, and then the question is, how do we? It's like, even if you try to winnow it out, come back to just picking up what's the number supposed to be, 30, 40 poems out of those that get turned in by the membership within. These are the challenges, these are the questions. As members, we all have to start thinking of, God, I hate sounding like Seinfeld. There has to be a better way. It's like, and yet it is, that process of how do we recognize our best work among one another, and poets, but we may not have even necessarily met through the organization, but beyond. How do we do that? But these are the questions for the next president and the officer will certainly also have to. That's what our thinking was for for splitting up and staggering, so that you all have to read it today. I think as I've called our email correspondence, I'd also pointed out, I don't think there's that many of you who will be heartbroken to have the idea that, wow, if my long poem gets nominated and one of them wins an award, then it's like, I'm so unhappy that the membership didn't rush to just try and figure out. I think the membership would far and wide prefer to say, no, they took the time, and if it won that long poem award, that's because the membership really had several weeks and months to actually consider it, and if they cast their vote, they made a thoughtful decision there because they actually read the whole thing, not skimming through it willy-nilly. Okay, yeah, it's like out of 70 poems, it's like, all right, in this time now, this is my pick. I had to just throw a dart here, and I'm sorry for you other 50 or 60 poems I didn't get to. I think no. But let's hope that with time to read those long poems now, over the next few months or so, we'll get some good results.
Yeah, and somewhat related to that, I know Greer and Adele are busy kind of going out and finding all the short poems they can to whittle down the Dwarf Star anthology. So they're kind of, the Dwarf Stars works a little bit differently than the Riesling, as you probably all know. But with the operations of the Riesling, that's one thing that we are going to be actively considering, is next year the time to roll out something new. So I have the names of 4 others that are going to be working with me to be creating surveys and, discussion with the membership at large. So again, we'll be seeking input from all of you, but I have a few people who have kind of stepped up and said, okay, this is, I'm willing to help on this, the Riesling revamp committee or whatever we want to call it. But as all the nominations and the membership grows, it does become a bigger and bigger book and a bigger and bigger thing to read and consider all those. So as we try to make this something that's practical, as we potentially reach 500, 600, over 1,000 members maybe, we want the SFPA to be able to continue to exist in the future and not just be a handful of people that are buried under thousands of pages every year just to select what they think is the best. So as we think about what are some of the options that exist, as you're starting to think, oh, well, the Riesling could operate a little bit better if it did it this way. You know, we can take that input and kind of create that larger conversation among the membership of what we do want next year's Riesling to look like, what we want the Riesling to look like 10 years from now, as we figure out what is a good way to select the quote unquote best of the year. Because we know that any way of selecting a best poem is going to be flawed in one means or another. You know, the current process isn't perfect. Anything that we switch to isn't going to be perfect, but it's our way of saying, hey, we've set certain guidelines, right? Like we can't, as a group of English speaking folks, we can't necessarily say that any English poem is better than any poem that's only in Spanish, but in terms of considering, hey, we've got one that's been translated from Spanish or from Portuguese or from any other language out there, we can set our guidelines and look within the English speaking world. Maybe there will be someday the SFPA equivalent for other languages, and that'll be awesome, and we can partner with them. But as we start to look at what guidelines we want for our Riesling anthology and for our best of, that's something that we're going to be needing to revise and figure out what's our path forward so that we can continue to exist. So if you have ideas, if you want to help out on that committee, certainly reach out and let me know.
And we also have just the physical aspects of the Riesling that as the number of nominations grow, the book grows in size. We get to a point where you can't actually print a book that gets over a certain number of pages and have it pulled together. And then there's the shipping costs. So these are all things that we have to consider as we go forward. And considering from last year, we've grown by what, 120 members, somewhere around that. We were at like just over 320, I think, last year. And we're at 450. That's pretty fast growth. And maybe some of that was because everybody was locked down in their homes and had nothing else to do. So they decided to get into reading poetry. But I think, you know, as we grow, this will affect all aspects. We'll be able to do more, but we have to have the capacity within our contests that, you know, a judge, if we went with a juried system for an award, like they do with some of the other ones, you know, what can the judges do? I know World Fantasy, I believe they still run on the system that they have judges for that award, and all the publishers mail those people books, and they get hundreds of books. The jury gets hundreds of books that they have to read through to try and get the short list. So there's, and like Brian said, every system has its pluses and minuses. There is nothing that in some way either can't be gained or can't be flawed, but we want to kind of serve the members and have what most of the members want in a system that will still work as we go forward.
I mean, I'm going to step in on that real fast and just say that one thing that I would really like us all as a membership to start considering is that I never felt like the Rieslings should have a monopoly on speculative poetry awards. Then I mean, it's nice to be kind of like an apex award than like one of the top awards. But I had talked to some of our members before who were very shy about. It's like, would you be offended if we created another award besides for Rieslings? But no, that's absolutely the whole point. Is that if we could actually, in fact, get say chapters from say Texas or California or from Italy or England or wherever we happen to have a membership body, for example, to take a stab at, we'd like to try a different model for judging and evaluating poems each year, each chapter. It's like, look, that helps the whole field globally, then, because look, it's like if we have 500 poems being nominated, it's kind of like it's like. Yeah, there's only one possible award that you could ever possibly get recognized for in a given year. Then that's really going to start, diminishing the opportunities for other poets to get recognition in the case where, in countries where that recognition could be very critical to the remainder of their literary path. But instead saying, well, it's like, I've got one of 10 possible awards in SFF poetry, then I think that's a much more interesting opportunity where we can actually spread recognition much more widely around out there, or perhaps recognize it in very specialized elements. In part of the reason why the dwarf stories came about, for example, was that people were concerned that over 10 years ago that short poems in the sci-fi crew format, in Tanka and so many others, did not have a competitive chance against the larger full-bodied poems that were going out there. Would you really take, say, Basho's haiku against Homer's Odyssey or Iliad? It's like it's kind of like apples to oranges. If they had competed in that same year, how were you to pick between that, right? So anyway, enough on that. But I hope you all just take it to heart. But maybe we should start not only figuring out a way to improve our own award processes for the organization, but to consider what you would want to see in another type of award system. All right, but enough of my soapbox here. What else do we have?
It looks like Lawrence, you had something to jump in here with?
Yeah, if I could just comment, I mean, going back a number of decades, I mean, I think one of the most important things that the Riesling did was to raise the presence of poetry within the science fiction community. And so, I mean, I think that the organization does both things, which is to raise sci-fi within the poetry community much more recently, but originally it was much more about getting more prestige for poetry within the SF communities. And that's something that that's still, with the science fiction conventions is one of the main focuses and things. And I think that one of the values of the Riesling was that it was considered that the SFW, the Science Fiction Writers of America, they would in their annual Nebula Awards anthologies always include the winners of the Riesling. And so, I mean, this is one of the things about, there is a value of that one award having that longevity as well as the name, but also what it means that award does then have other, I think it's great to have lots of other ways of recognizing things. And I think that the organization has developed, and, with the Elgin, with, for chapbooks, for full-length collections, there's lots of ways that has, that the organization has evolved. But I think that, the Riesling still serves a purpose and still serves an important purpose within the SF community, to not discount that.
I mean, I think one of my concerns was that, I started off with the SFPA at a time, when, let's see, it was almost a given that you would get, the winning Riesling poems published in the SFWA anthology, and you also apparently received, as everyone else, a token payment, as well with that. At some point, and I'm really still not certain what happened, though, is that we suddenly found ourselves getting decoupled from, SFWA there, and that we got informed like, oh, well, now it's individual editors each year, then get to make the call whether or not we include your Riesling Award in our anthology. Okay, well, you don't let us know when the editor has been chosen for this, and how do we contact them? And you sort of, it was kind of like, in my personal opinion, not the organization's opinion, it was kind of a rather dismissive one, that we wouldn't even get the weight of SFWA's executive leadership would strongly encourage you to include the SFPA poems in this anthology. And then all of a sudden, the next thing we know, we're getting a letter of, no, we're just not going to include the poems in the SFWA anthology. And, again, as I said, so I feel like I have been careful, that I have made it very clear that it's just my personal opinion that the new revised membership guidelines that say that a poet who has raised somehow over $1,000 getting paid for poetry, particularly SFF poetry, is still not considered eligible now at all in any way, shape, or form for SFWA membership. And considering for myself, that would mean that, I just finished talking to the Library of Congress this week here, on speculative poetry in Southeast Asia. I'm not considered qualified as a writer. Well, that's very surprising. It doesn't do anything for my particular personal outfit, but I just find myself saying, that's going to be a task for whoever comes after me, I proposed to see? What is that conversation we do have with SFWA someday, Ben, about, I'm not asking you to say fully restore publication presence, but at the very least, can we at least change the membership requirement? But for those of you who are joint members of SFWA and SFPA, please consider that this is an issue for our fellow poets here. That I hope our conversation can continue where I have not been successful on that. So see, there's plenty of work for us still to do with this.
Yeah, and I stand corrected. I didn't, I let my SFWA membership lapse, but I'm still in SFPA. So I was unaware of these recent changes in SFWA, although I do know that my Riesling was one of the few that an individual editor didn't include in the anthology, although the later editors did always include. So I was a skipped year, but I think it's something that back in the day, it did have a lot of value and was an important thing. I mean, when I was, I've been a SFPA member, I think, since 93, so almost 30 years. And it was, there were a lot fewer of us, and also poetry got a lot less attention, both within sci-fi and also science fiction poetry got a lot less attention within the mainstream of poetry as well. So, we've come a long way, which is great.
And another group that's been making waves recently too is the Speculative Literature Foundation. I don't know that they specifically have publications, but one thing that they kind of started with was sending around grants, getting people funding to help them create writing. So they're kind of one of the up and coming organizations. I think based kind of in Chicago is where they came out of. I know a number of the SFPA folks were original members with that group. So they're kind of one thing that's also kind of been a recent force and kind of spreading the love of speculative literature of multiple varieties. And I know one thing that they talk about is kind of in comparing like, more literary magazines versus speculative magazines, like we do have lots of good options to receive money from when we, submit stories or poems, versus, there's umpteen bajillion literary mags that, might be the top in their field, but you're still kind of, just sending out poems for contributor copies, just because it is so academic. What's that?
And also paying submission fees in a lot of cases.
Right, So I think certainly SFWA has helped be a force for kind of almost like a guild or just kind of putting that pressure on publishers to pay some amount for the work and continuing to be one of the higher paying rates that exist. But yeah, so those are some of the other groups. But that's a good transition here. I know John Paul wanted to make a mention of what we're doing with Starline and Eye to the Telescope. Some of you may have already heard about.
Yeah, as most people probably noticed from the announcement in last issue of Starline, we've raised our pay rates to 4 cents a word with the $4 minimum. So that's really exciting to move up and try and have more competitive pay rates. Hope to keep that trend going as we move through the year and see how that works out on our budget. But it seems to be a good change so far. Another thing that I wanted to say for those poets submitting, as our membership grows, the magazine is only still so many pages. And because of that, it's become more competitive. I noticed I have to send out more rejections. Don't take that personally. The magazine's still only 40 to 48 pages, and our membership has grown considerably recently. So keep those submissions coming in, but do keep in mind that it's more competitive than it was. I'm also excited to announce that probably starting next issue, I'm going to be doing interviews with other speculative poetry publishers, just to try and spread the word about new venues that have cropped up, venues that have been around for a while that others may not have heard of, and try and support our speculative poetry community in that way. And I also wanted to throw out there that last year, I had gotten in touch with someone that taught poetry in prisons, and we were able to submit, or rather donate some issues of Starline for prisoners to read. And if anyone comes across opportunities like this where we might be able to help with social justice issues, prison reform is a big issue for me, but it doesn't need to be limited to that sort of thing. If anyone has any ideas of ways that we can help out our community and those less fortunate with the gift of poetry, I'm all ears for that sort of thing. And I'm going to continue hunting for opportunities like that myself. But that's about it.
Yeah, and I think that one of the awesome things about, it might seem like a drop in the bucket to kind of have, send a few journals to a place, but right, that's building bridges, that's building connections, offering opportunity for conversations. So I think that's one awesome thing that poetry allows to exist is having these opportunities to connect with others that we might not otherwise, being able to kind of touch a number of different areas in society. And, maybe not every opportunity will turn into, a big lever where we can pull and change something. But the more opportunities, the more bridges that we begin to build, the more of those that will become more solid and become something that might make a change for something bigger.
And speaking with this instructor in the prisons, particularly the speculative arts are appealing to those incarcerated because it's a way to express freedom of the mind and to escape their current plight. So the speculative arts have been very popular. The prisoners were extremely excited to get their hands on this. And I've encouraged hopefully them to write speculative poetry, because at some point, I don't know how I could pull it off. It comes with a lot of complications, but I'd love to do a issue of inmate poetry.
All right, I think we're coming up toward the end of our hour here. Just wanted to give an opportunity for any of the other execs here or any other members that had things they wanted to raise and discuss. Other thoughts?
Wendy, you're muted.
Sorry about that. I just wanted to bring up that SFPA was approved for a full program at Balticon. I'm going to be joined by Bryant O'Hara, Jeff Landis, and Mary Truzillo. We have a SFPA designated group reading. We have a discussions in speculative poetry panel. I will be hosting an open mic, and I will be officiating the poetry contest for Balticon, although it is run by their in-house people. And I also was requested to teach a speculative poetry workshop, which I will be doing. So I'm going to be pretty busy at Balticon in 2 weeks. It should be a lot of fun. It is in person this year, so there's not going to be a lot of recordings, but at least this is a major regional con. We will have a really strong presence there this year, and I think it's going to be very exciting. I also wanted to bring up, I am working in with LostCon, or at least trying to get us set up to have an actual room where we could host an awards ceremony for the winners of our magazines, just like a lot of the other organizations kind of have a home con where they can do their awards in person and record it so that it can be seen by the membership. I'm trying to get that set up for us at LostCon. It's at the end of November, which is just after the last of our awards will be given. So it's at a good time space. Plus, we have a rather large group of our poets in the Los Angeles area. So I think that we would have enough people to come in and do the awards. And of course, I will try to get us a reading there as usual and a discussion of speculative poetry. And of course, a fan table, which we did last year. Thank you very much, Denise, for manning that. I very much appreciate it, especially at the last minute. I don't know if anyone knew, but I had applied for a fan table at LostCon. It was like one of the first things I did as con coordinator. And then I got COVID. I couldn't go. So, I didn't even know that they had approved it. And thankfully, one of my friends was there and says, "Oh, Wendy, by the way, your table is here." So I was able to have my friend hold the table for us, and Denise just went in and pitched in. And I understand, Denise, you were a wonderful ambassador for poetry. So just wanted to acknowledge your hard work, and that was great. I still would love, I would love to set up more fan tables for those of you who are going to cons. You feel you could dedicate a little bit of time. A fan table is a great place just to kind of have a place to hang your hat, so to speak, at a con. It's a place for poets to gather at. So it'd be nice if we could get a few more of these out and about. And of course, it does get the SFPA name out there as people pass by and they can talk to us one-on-one. Let's see. Other than that, oh, also I have in the works possibly to do a writers conference for us. I just wanted to throw the idea out there. I may be able to get us a space on Second Life, which is a virtual reality simulation. They have a program where nonprofits can use the space to host events. This would be a place where anyone with a computer could basically portal in, create an avatar, and attend as if in a 3D environment. If we could get one of these spaces, then we could maybe hold workshops, we could hold a gathering, that kind of thing. And it would be easier for us to do that for a workshop, or rather for a writing conference, like a once a year event, than having somewhere in person that incurs so much travel costs. Second Life is free to join. You don't have to pay anything. You can do this entire concept on a free account. But on my part, it's setting up things for us there. Thankfully, being a poet laureate right now, suddenly they are listening to me a lot more than they maybe had in the past. I guess it's the power of the poet laureate, which I'm learning about. And Brian, one day you and I need to talk, because I'd like to, because you've been a poet laureate for many years.
Yes.
I'd love to pick your brain and see what kind of ideas maybe we could, that I could put together, and based on some of your experiences too. But this is just something I wanted to throw out there. I'm kind of curious if people would feel comfortable on Second Life if I managed to get this together for us, or we could do the typical Discord and Zoom for this idea too, although that would actually be more expensive. And I know I would prefer having whatever funds we're getting from the new membership coming in, going back to our poets in the form of better pay rates in our magazines, as opposed to paying for a writing conference. So anyway, I just wanted to throw that out to the universe. That's what I do. It's an idea to be thought about. I don't think we would implement it this year, but possibly next year if we get our nonprofit status. They do require a nonprofit status for this particular group. But it sounds like I think I might be able to get something set up maybe in the next 6 months or so, as things start to solidify and they get to know me a little bit better as a poet laureate. So we'll see. Like I said, just out in the universe. So I apologize to the other members. I feel like I've been dominating, but I
was just going to mention that with cons, we have StokerCon next weekend, which of course is an organization that supports poetry. And they are doing some readings there. I don't think there's any panels. I think I'd suggested one, but you know, they have quite a roster of both members and attendees and panels. There are, I know Angela Eureka Smith and I are doing a reading at like 9 a.m. Monday or Sunday morning. So we'll see if anybody comes, but I plan to do a bit of poetry reading. We will do our part to continue to spread the word of SFPA there.
Right. And I know Denise and Lawrence have been waiting very patiently, and it sounds like Akua has some things to bring up here as well. So Denise, why don't you go ahead?
Okay, well, I've been waiting long enough. I forgot what I was gonna say. Oh my God. Well, thank you, Wendy. And one of the things I would really love is if we could get the really great poets that live in LA to come back to LostCon. There have been some problems in the past with LostCon and poets. And so some of the really great poets that have won tons of Rislings and stuff who live in LA won't come to the convention. So that's something I think we need to really work on. And I've worked on a few people about that. And like I say, I've totally forgot what I was going to talk about, but another convention that's totally off the rails that I always attend because I belong to a cosplay group there is Gallifrey 1, which is the Doctor Who convention. And you might think it would be a strange place for a fan table, but you might be surprised. So I don't know, maybe that's something we might want to look at, simply because there are so many people who attend that convention and their interests are actually quite varied.
If I could interject, I've actually been a dealer at Gallifrey 1 for almost 15 years. I'm a regular.
Yeah.
If you're willing to run a fan table, I might be able to get us in. So
Yeah,
we'll talk about this. I'm even scheduled for next year, believe it or not. So I have
a ticket for next year. So
yeah. So we'll talk about this, and I'll see if I can get us in.
And one last thing, because I don't have another opportunity to do this. Long ago and far away in a galaxy far, far away, I had a fanzine called Dumar's Reviews. And that's basically what I did. I reviewed stuff. And I also published some poetry. And there was and this was in the 90s. And although he was, only a toddler at the time, Lawrence Schimmel sent me some poetry that was amazing. And I published it. And as far as I know, I think I discovered Lawrence Schimmel as a poet. I think that might have been his first publication. So I just wanted to throw that out there. Hi, Lawrence. It's great to see you.
Oh, thank you, please. Definitely, it was. I mean, I was still in high school at the time, so I mean, it was ages and ages and ages ago. What I wanted to mention is that I'm in Madrid, so I'm one of the international members. So I'm grateful that this was early for this to happen. But I don't get back to the US very often. I do generally try and go to AWP. I've missed the last couple of years because of COVID, but one thing that I would suggest that we might consider doing, and I'd be happy to be one of the people organizing it. So a number of years ago with Lambda Literary, we did one of a queer guide to the book fair to list which the queer presses were. Most recently, I've been working with Alta to do a translation bingo game so that presses that publish translations can all offer to donate a book, and then people can go around and all of the presses then have the little bingo card. And it would be a great way, I think, to help people find other speculative poetry journals or publishers who wish to take part in the thing. Also, it'll help raise science fiction poetry at the book fair, I think at AWP in general, and get SFPA's name out there, because each of the tables who participates keeps the little bingo card. And then people, it sends people to all the different tables. So that's just an idea to throw out there. I'm happy to be part of the people coordinating it and doing it. My contact is just laurenschimmel@gmail.com. So, and I do plan to be back at the Seattle AWP next year, COVID willing.
Oh, I might actually go to my first AWP event after a while. So I always just find myself just so tormented by it. Where it's like, okay, here's 6 million poets, and other people doing that. I'm like, buy my book. Like, okay, how do we make meaningful connections that way? But you might actually just convince me to go there.
I think it could be overwhelming. And what I've found, I mean, with Alta, we've been doing the translation bingo for a number of years now, and it really helped. This was an idea that I first found out through the Feminist Bookstore Network back at Book Expo, where the Feminist Bookstore Network organized this in order to find feminist publishers at the big, vast Book Expo. So it's a way that for like-minded people to find each other, and also to help raise that, lots of people didn't even know that whatever sub-community exists. So, I think there's a lot of people who would be very interested at AWP who don't even know that we exist or that our publications exist, or, and so it has a lot of pluses.
All right. And Kua, I think you had something to say about connections and formalizing our links with other organizations.
So I was writing it, and yes, and what I'm saying is that we need to do that. I recall creating a huge kerfuffle last year when I was asking for a brochure, and we don't have a current brochure. I mean, I let it go because I can move on and do other things. And we've heard from everybody here about ways in which they do outreach, but these are all one-offs. And I'm saying organizationally, you have more strength if you define it, if you create it, if you routinize it. You know, if there's a defined specific thing that I can give whenever I appear somewhere.
There's a flyer on the available on the site.
That was part of the huge kerfuffle about its currency and its compellingness or lack of. Right? Okay, and someone says maybe we need a PR person. Well, but till we get a PR person, maybe we just need, you know, the executive group or maybe another committee to define and create some of these tools. Listen, it's disheartening to see the t-shirts and hear, oh, we're all out of t-shirts, ha ha ha, and so I can't have a t-shirt. I mean, come on, in this very discussion, we keep stubbing our toes on this. So anyway, that's my point, and I'll be quiet now.
When we first did the t-shirts, we were very short of money. It required a substantial initial investment, and it took us ages, like a couple of years to break even on them. It was getting them sold was a very slow process. So we were not eager to do that again once.
It might be easier nowadays.
Saturated.
Yeah, that was like 5 years ago. So things have changed a lot, especially with print on demand.
More members, more money, and obviously more demand. So very soon we hope to be able to offer a new t-shirt. And Brian Tawara had come up with a great motto, which we might want to either replace the old motto or offer both. Brian's or tagline, I should say, Brian's suggestion was, "Do your verse, evil overlord."
All right, I stand by it. I stand by it. All right. So anyway, I think the big question would almost be like we should probably just explore something like go through about probably 3 or 4 different websites that do the t-shirt print on demand thing there, and just make sure that they actually have a non-predatory cut on it, because I know in some cases it's kind of like, oh yeah, it's like you can only make it enough money to make it worth your while here if you price your t-shirts at $50 or something like that. So but still, I think if we could figure out some way so that I'm not getting the membership flooding for Richard with streams of Zazzle, T-shirt Republic, funkyt-shirts.com, and he's got to track down 60 million income streams all of a sudden for us. But let's keep exploring that. I think that'll be the big fire to light under all of us. Believe me, it's like I myself is no fan of the era where we had to just make our own materials, but it's very frustrating. I feel like that penguin, that claymation thing. Just why do I have to do everything myself? So yeah, believe me, it's like I get as horrified as the rest of us. Even it sometimes gets that hard, and if nothing else, it's like again, probably before we start to wrap up this portion of it, believe me, it's like no one in the executive committee loves the look of a website here. It's like we all know we have to get the redesign going on it so that we can stop saying the 1990s called and we want their website format back. It's like yes, it's like but the problem is finding an effective design system where everyone can update it in future administrations, and because the WordPress model doesn't quite work, for what we all have to be doing on that. And everyone who's been trying to step up to volunteer has helpfully wanted to volunteer for amounts of money that, well, gee, we can print a copy of the Riesling this year, or we can pay the web designer, for the same amount, then at $2,000, $3,000 a pop. It's like, okay, you don't want it. Like, as poets, I know it's like, even with 500 of us running around out here, that's not exactly, the Rothschilds here. It's like, where we have that kind of money to be throwing around out here. It's like poet budgets get poety, people. It's like, if this is not a get rich quick scheme at all by any stretch. Well, it's like, I think as someone was saying, if I had my way, it's like, I would love to see it here in the next 10 years or so, where we could say, yeah, speculative poetry is not a get rich slow scheme. But this will require all of us to figure out how do we build that demand and that audience for, the speculative poetry out there. And I'm thankful for all of you who've already been contributing so many great ideas and opportunities for us, believe me. But, all right, bye, Jean-Paul. All right, so, Brian, what else do we have to deal with here?
Oh, I think it's time for us to wrap up here, but it's been, good to kind of hear what other people are thinking, to get some renewed pushes to revamp some of our public efforts and group creation efforts, right? Whether that's, trying to get those t-shirts back up and running, getting, we do have an updated flyer, I think, that Wendy had been working on. So we'll make sure that that's available. And, if we have different options of flyers, if other people are creating flyers, we can aim to get those distributed or accessible to folks. So we do want to make sure that we're giving people ways to talk us up, brag us up, and share our info. But again, just we have ways of reaching out to us. I know I saw Rich post the treasurer email and Diane post the membership chair one. We've got the overall exec Google group that you can talk to. So we're here.
Talk to, not yell at. No, I'm just kidding.
We're interested in hearing what you have to say. If you can make it to the 6 o'clock, that's good. The 6 p.m. Pacific time one. But if not, it's presumably going to be fairly similar to what we talked about here. So thanks again for coming.
Even more off the hook here.
We'll be seeing all your votes coming in and continue to see your poetry out in the world. So keep it up.
Thanks, everyone. It's so good to see all of you in video face to face here for a change here. Take care of yourselves.